I was floating on my back in the middle of my lake when I heard the whistle. Not a referee whistle or a lifeguard whistle, but the kind of whistle that only someone drunk on HOA power could produce. Standing on my dock was Beatrice Harrington, president of the Pine Ridge Estates HOA, holding a clipboard like it was a weapon of mass destruction. She shouted across the water with a voice that could peel paint, "You are in violation of Community Ordinance 17-3. No unauthorized recreational water activities without prior board approval." I treaded water and stared at her in disbelief. "This is my property line extends 15 FT into the lake." She waved a yellow paper in the air like a flag of victory. "That will be a $2,500 fine payable within 30 days. That was Tuesday morning. By Friday afternoon, I had raised her HOA fees by $10,000. Let me tell you exactly how it happened. My name is David Morrison, and I moved to Pine Ridge Estates in Sunset Grove 3 years ago specifically because the property came with lake access. I work as a forensic accountant, which means I spend my days finding financial irregularities that other people try to hide. The irony of what was about to unfold was not lost on me. Before I get into the madness that followed, let me paint you a picture of who I was dealing with. Beatrice Harrington was not just any HOA president. She was a force of nature wrapped in and Taylor separates and fueled by an unholy combination of expired diet pills and self-righteousness. She had business cards that read Supreme Community Standards Administrator, even though nobody had authorized that title. She once called 911 because someone's Halloween decorations were still up on November 2nd at 7 a.m. I had actually met her briefly when I first moved in. She showed up at my door with a fruit basket that contained exactly 3 apples and a printed copy of the HOA bylaws, all 347 pages of them. She informed me with a smile that looked painful that she ran a tight ship and expected full compliance with all community standards. When I asked her what those standards were, she pointed to the binder and said everything was in there, including proper swimming attire requirements for private property water usage. Pine Ridge Estates was supposed to be a peaceful suburban paradise, 27 houses arranged around Lake Serenity, which, despite its name, was about to become anything but serene. The HOA was run by Beatrice Harrington, a 58-year-old former PTA president, who treated the neighborhood like her personal kingdom. Beatrice had been HOA president for 7 years straight, mostly because nobody else wanted the job. She wore Powers suits to check mailboxes and carried a tape measure to verify lawn height. Every morning at 6:30 sharp, she would patrol the neighborhood in her golf cart, which she had somehow convinced the HOA to purchase for official business. The trouble started small. First came the warning letters. Your dock has unapproved decorative elements. Please remove the fishing rod holder immediately. Your kayak is stored at an angle that violates aesthetic guidelines. The lake usage schedule shows you have exceeded your monthly allocation of watercraft launches. I ignored most of them because they were ridiculous. My deed clearly stated that my property included riparian rights to the lake. I had every legal right to swim, fish, and boat whenever I pleased, but Beatrice had other ideas. She installed security cameras on light posts aimed at the lake, claiming it was for community safety. She started issuing fines for splashing that exceeded acceptable decibel levels. She even tried to implement a reservation system for swimming, limiting each household to 2 hours per week. The situation escalated when she created something she called the Lake Serenity Monitoring Committee, which consisted of herself and her 2 friends, Dorothy Summers and Linda Patterson. These 3 women would sit on lawn chairs with binoculars and notebooks, documenting every perceived violation. They recorded the exact time I launched my kayak, how many fish I caught, and even tried to measure the wake my boat created using a homemade device constructed from pool noodles and rulers. Dorothy was Beatrice's enforcer, a 70-year-old retired hall monitor who still wore her whistle from 1983. Linda was the secretary, though she mostly just nodded and ate coffee cake. During meetings, together, They formed what the neighborhood kids called the coven, though never within earshot. I tried reasoning with them at first. I showed them my property survey, which clearly marked my land extending into the lake. I presented the original deed from 1962 that granted perpetual water rights to my lot. I even hired a surveyor to mark the exact boundaries with floating buoys. Beatrice responded by fining me for installing unauthorized navigational markers. The $1,500 fine was the last straw. I decided to attend the next HOA meeting, something I had avoided for 3 years. What I discovered there changed everything. The meeting was held in Beatrix's living room, which he had decorated with printed copies of every violation notice she had ever issued, framed like trophies. Only 5 people showed up, including me. Beatrice sat at the head of her dining table with a gavel she bought on the internet. As treasurer, Gerald Simmons read the financial report. I noticed something odd. The numbers did not add up. When I asked to see the bank statements, Beatrice said they were confidential. I reminded her that HOA financials are legally required to be transparent to all members. She reluctantly handed over a folder. What I found was shocking. Over the past 3 years, Beatrice had been using HOA funds for personal expenses and hiding them as community improvements. The new landscaping around the community center was actually her personal garden renovation. The emergency repair fund had paid for her pool resurfacing. The security system upgrade was actually a premium cable package for her house. But that was just the tip of the iceberg. She had charged the HOA for a leadership conference in Miami that was actually her cousin's wedding. The community newsletter. Printing costs were bills from her daughter's college copy center job where no newsletters were ever printed. She had even submitted receipts for lake treatment chemicals that were actually pool supplies for her backyard hot tub. The most egregious discovery was a line item for professional development seminars totaling $8,000. These seminars turned out to be online courses for becoming a life coach, which she was taking under the premise that better leadership skills would benefit the community. She had already printed business cards for her side hustle using the HOA's credit card. I documented everything with my phone camera while Beatrice rattled on about unauthorized bird feeders. The next day, I filed a formal complaint with the state HOA Oversight Board and contacted a lawyer who specialized in HOA disputes. The investigation moved quickly. Within 2 weeks, an auditor arrived to review the books. Beatrice tried to claim it was all a misunderstanding, that she had simply made some accounting errors, but the evidence was overwhelming. She had embezzled over $40,000. At the emergency HOA meeting, I ran for treasurer and won unopposed. Gerald had resigned in shame, after admitting he had never actually looked at the bank statements. With my new position, I had access to all the records, and what I found was even worse than I thought. Beatrice had been finding residents for fictional violations and pocketing the money. She had created fake vendor invoices and paid them to her sister's company. She had even sold HOA equipment on online marketplaces and kept the proceeds. The board voted unanimously to remove her as president and pursue legal action. But I was not done yet. As treasurer, I proposed a special assessment to recover the stolen funds. Any board member found guilty of misusing HOA money would be personally liable for damages plus a penalty fee. The penalty I suggested was $10,000. It passed 4-0 with Beatrice abstaining because she was no longer allowed to vote. When Beatrice received her bill, itemized with every fraudulent transaction, she went ballistic. She stood up at the meeting and started screaming about persecution and discrimination. She accused me of orchestrating a hostile takeover. She threatened to sue everyone in the room. Her meltdown was spectacular. She threw her gavel across the room, nearly hitting Gerald's replacement, a mild-mannered retiree named Walter. She kicked over a chair and declared that she was the only one who truly cared about property values. She claimed I was a plant from a rival HOA trying to destroy Pine Ridge Estates from within. When someone pointed out that there was no rival HOA, she accused them of being part of the conspiracy. Dorothy tried to calm her down, but Beatrice turned on her too, revealing that Dorothy had been getting kickbacks from the fake landscaping invoices. Linda just sat there, slowly eating her coffee cake, seemingly unbothered by the chaos. At one point, Beatrice grabbed the meeting minutes and tried to eat them, claiming she was destroying evidence of a coup. Someone had to physically wrestle the papers from her mouth. Unfortunately for her, her meltdown was being recorded as part of the official meeting minutes. The video ended up on the neighborhood's social media page, and within hours it had been shared hundreds of times. Local news picked it up, dubbing her the Lake Lady who lost it. The forensic audit revealed the full extent of her crimes. She had stolen $63,000 over 7 years. The district attorney filed charges for embezzlement, fraud, and theft. Her assets were frozen pending trial. At her sentencing 6 months later, Beatrice stood before the judge in the same power suit she used to wear while measuring grass height. The prosecutor laid out the evidence piece by piece: bank records, fake invoices, testimony from residents she had illegally fined. Her lawyer tried to argue that she had dedicated years to the community and had made some bookkeeping mistakes. The judge was not convinced. He noted that she had systematically defrauded her neighbors while abusing her position of trust. The sentence came down hard: 3 years in state prison, 5 years probation, and full restitution of all stolen funds, plus interest. The $10,000 special assessment was added to her total bill, bringing her debt to over $75,000. Beatrice collapsed in her chair when she heard the verdict. Her face went from red to white to gray in a matter of seconds. She kept muttering that it was not fair, that she had only been trying to maintain property values. The bailiff had to practically carry her out of the courtroom as she sobbed about her destroyed reputation and financial ruin.